Hello and welcome back to Listen Up Startups. I'm your host, Ashlie Collins, founder and CEO of Humane Startup. Joining me today, we have Ivan Liljeqvist. I'm so sorry if I
Liljeqvist,
tortured...
almost. No worries, no worries. That's why on the internet I'm known as Ivan on Tech, because Liljeqvist is too complex, so no worries.
I will work on that. You know, there's no excuses, but yeah. But thank you for joining me and allowing me to badger your name all in one fell swoop. But would really love to share, to kick things off rather, with some background information on your entrepreneurial journey and the idea behind Moralis. So just to, because I kind of got excited and skipped over it there, Ivan is the CEO and founder of Moralis. So let us know what you're up to over there and how you got it all started.
Yeah, for sure. And first and foremost, thanks for inviting me to the podcast. And Moralis is a data platform for blockchain developers. So, for example, if you are building a blockchain wallet, you're building a blockchain game, whatever you want to build in blockchain, you always need to read the data from the blockchain. And it can be compared in a way when internet was new, all the data was public, but there was no way to find the data and to structure it. And then the search engines came, and then the internet became structured. Right now, when it comes to cryptocurrencies, Web3, blockchain, we're in the same stage as internet was in the beginning, where all the financial data is there, it is public, all the Bitcoin transactions, Ethereum transactions, they are in the blockchain, anyone can read them, but it's very difficult to get everything aggregated, sorted, to get everything indexed. So we are a product for developers. So if you're listening to this and you're a developer and you yourself want to build something on top of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, then Moralis is a tool for you. So you can go to moralis.io. And the way that I found this place in the world building tools for Web3 and blockchain developers is through being a developer myself. So my co-founder Philip and I, we are developers. We've been programming since we were kids, and we met at computer science here in Stockholm, in Sweden, in the university. And we've always been interested in new technologies and building something. And as our interest in cryptocurrencies grew, that's also where we got a lot of ideas for creating our own project, our own startup. And that's also where the idea for Moralis came. And we wanted to build something for developers because we're developers ourselves, so we understand it very well.
Yeah. Very cool. I love that. And I have to say that my eldest son, who just turned 12, is really excited for this conversation. He is on a pathway to becoming a developer. He is a brilliant mathematician, and he's working towards his black belt at the moment through Code Ninjas. So he's like, Mom, I can't believe. So anyhow, got a little celebrity moment for you there.
And you know, it's fantastic now because the new generation, the kids in the new generation, they want to be developers and they want to build things. Yeah. And the big idols are the big tech entrepreneurs of the last century and this century. And it is the same for me. So, and I think it's very positive because in the past, people were mostly impressed with, basketball player or some kind of sportsman. And that's fantastic. But personally, I find that it's even better and cooler that the big rock stars of today for kids and for the new generation, it is the tech entrepreneurs and founders. I think that's very good.
And is that what got you into development? Celebrity idols? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was a big inspiration to see how people can build something and it becomes global. And in what other industry can you do that where you have so much control of your own destiny? Because in sports, a lot of your destiny is controlled by your genes. You may or may not become big. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much you train. If you're not made for a specific sport, you're not gonna succeed. And also when it comes to just the health aspect, I was swimming a lot when I was a kid. And I remember when things started to become serious, okay, now we have to train twice per day. Now you cannot really go to school like in the past because now in the morning you have a training and in the afternoon. And at the end of the day, if to be a sports person on a high level, it's a trade-off between your health and between your career. And that's why also I switched from going more and more into sports to being an entrepreneur and also learning as much as possible about tech and development, is because it felt that okay, the opportunity is massive. As long as we have the skills, my team and I have the knowledge, as long as we learn the correct things and have the correct strategy, and that's fully in our control. You can be anyone with any genes. That's fully in your control as long as you are willing to learn and study and are curious about tech and the industry.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And it's so true what you say. And sports has actually played a huge part in my life and my career journey. I started out as an athlete, and then just wasn't, because I needed to go make money. Between my two, I've got 3 kids. My 2 boys, they're only a year apart, and the other has gone down the sports route, and so it's a constant competition. He's quite a good cricketer, playing at a very high level. But it is. And to your point, he just is, like, it's nothing that he's doing or I'm doing or anybody else just doing. He was just born with this thing, whereas I think, with Seb, he's got so much more control over it. So very, very inspiring stuff.
Yeah, and listen, with sports, it's not like it's easy. Like, if you have genes, you still need to, like, it's still very hard, but a requirement is to have certain physical attributes. But with tech and startups, it's you can be anyone, and that's empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very inspiring and powerful thing to talk about being in control of your own destiny. But the truth is, and you probably know this all too well, there's no such thing as embarking on an entrepreneurial adventure and not facing challenges.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of those center around funding. So I'd love to dig in a little bit more on your journeys and the challenges that you've faced and your approach to funding in particular.
Yeah, and you're fully correct. Doing a startup, building a startup, it's a challenge every day. And especially in connection to funding, I think sometimes people get it a bit twisted, because you hear a lot that, all right, you're a startup, this means that you need to exponentially scale. And that's true, that you need to grow, but it's not easy. That's the thing. It's not easy, and everyone has to figure it out as they go. And I actually have this book here that I have on my shelf normally that we discuss in our team. The hard thing about hard things. A fantastic book, because it really explains that even the big successes, like for example Ben Horowitz from A16Z, that's his book. His company that he made an exit from in the early 2000s, that was a struggle every day. And he explains it in this book very well, that every day is a struggle, and it's a very big struggle. And there are no simple solutions. My favorite chapter in this book is about that there are no silver bullets, because sometimes people in startups, they think that I'm going to do something in a smart way so that I don't have to fight. For example, I'm going to niche myself into a segment so that there's no competition. I'm just going to, shortcut the industry, and I'm going to find some way of making it big without any competition, without taking any fights. Yeah. But there are no such silver bullets. There are only lead bullets, which means that you work hard, you improve your product, you compete. It's just this day in and day out, millions of lead bullets, not a single silver bullet. And when it comes to funding, it all depends on which startup you have. In tech, I think funding is very applicable to many startups because they are global. Yeah. So as long as your startup is global and has a big ambition, funding makes perfect sense. And I learned it myself even before Moralis. Why it makes sense is because here in Sweden we have a few cryptocurrency exchanges, basically different companies that help you to buy and sell cryptocurrencies and trade. And most of them did not take a lot of funding, so they grew organically. And then you have companies in the US like Coinbase or globally Binance and others that did take funding, and that's another galaxy. I mean, they're a million times bigger. So in tech, where the stakes are high and the potential is high and you can grow exponentially, and there is really a roadmap to global success, I think it's very important to consider funding if it makes sense. For us it did make sense because we are building infrastructure, and that requires a lot of initial capital to get going, and we are global and we are in tech, and it for us it was a good avenue to get started. And before we had funding, we had our initial version, proof concept, everything worked very nicely. We self-funded for the first year, and then we decided to go the VC route.
Nice. Yeah. And it's interesting. So my background is in HR technology and recruitment advertising. And it was interesting. I was always part of the founding team, but never the CEO. I was the rev gen engine, basically. Ashlie, go find me the money.
Right.
But
Right.
But with the first company, we sold to Indeed, and that was after. I mean, it was rapid. It was like 18 months, and we bootstrapped that, and that was the most intense experience of my entire life. I wouldn't change it for anything ever. And I've often told people that it was like a trial by fire MBA. And I'd been in corporate for a good 7 years by that time. I worked for Monster. That's where I met the founding team. And I carried like a $30 million number. It's not like I was unaccustomed to pressure, but that was just like a whole new world. What was that first year of self-funding like for you?
Yeah, so before Moralis, we, my co-founder Philip and I, we did e-learning. So we had what at that point was called Ivan on Tech Academy, and now it's called Moralis Academy. It became the biggest online university for Web3 developers, for blockchain developers. So that's how we got started, and that's also where we got the capital to do Moralis for the first year ourselves. And it is, of course, a big risk because you're taking money that you know for sure you have, and then you're putting it into something that may or may not die very quickly because we don't have external. We're just self-funding. So it was a big risk, but it has paid off because it really gave everyone the confidence that we're serious about it, that it's we're not playing around, we're putting our own money into it. So I think it helped us a lot as well, and it got us a better valuation than if we would just go with nothing and try to raise funding. But I think that roadmap for us played out very well because the difference between e-learning, which we did to begin with, and infrastructure, which we do now, and APIs for developers, is that e-learning is basically zero cost up front. You can start recording courses and teaching, and the gross margin there is very high. And then if you want to start there, and anyone, the reason I love e-learning is because anyone can do it. If you want to start making money online, probably e-learning is the best. You can make some course, you can educate about something. And with that capital, we wanted to do an infra company because the vision and the goals and the ambition of that was even bigger than our e-learning, so that's what excited us, and yeah, that's how we did it. And it is of course very risky, and it's not it wasn't a light decision to take a lot of own money and put into a new thing. But yeah, I mean we like doing new things, so it's at the end of the day it was also quite natural for us to do. And sometimes I'm joking, I'm saying that startup is like building a Lego, because people tell me so. On Christmas, do you work on Christmas? I'm like, I'm not working, but I am doing the startup. It's kind of like Lego or, Bionicle. You're building your Lego. Even on a Sunday, I can go there. Maybe I can, change something. I can polish it. So it's we are that kind of people that like that. So for us, it's not work. I mean, it's tough. It's challenging, but it's in a good way challenging. It is very difficult and demanding, but it's like building a massive Lego. I love that. It doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely true that I remember a time in my life that was very much so like that, especially before I had children. I was traveling probably 75% of the time. I was all over the world. It was amazing. I'm like, oh no, it's fine. I'll just extend my weekend in Paris. And, I think, there's been this, it makes me think of a couple of things. First and foremost, I think we've got to stop vilifying people for working hard.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and and I think that there's something to be said for embracing that time in your life. I've been able to step back now that I am 40 because, almost 40, shockingly close to 40, because there are different parts of my life that I want to prioritize now, but I have that luxury because I dug in when I had the opportunity to take risks, and I worked hard at that period in time in my life. And I think there's been a really almost dangerous narrative on social media lately about what it means to be an entrepreneur, and almost this expectation. And look, I'm not into hustle culture, and I don't think everybody needs to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Gary Vee.
Yeah, like, this is not my jam.
Yeah.
I think burnout is real. Like, take care of yourselves, people. But, I do also think that there is no such thing as like a guru quick fix, sign up for this one course, and in 6 weeks you're going to have a 7-figure business. And it's almost like if you are willing to get out and work hard, you're vilified for that. It's just like, oh, well, you should just go manifest that. And it's been really refreshing since we stood up the podcast and started talking with founders who are out in the field and embracing the different stages of their life. And one of the reasons I was so excited to sit down and talk with you is the way that you're building your company and the culture that you're embedding in it. And I think particularly with remote first and allowing folks to, that flexibility. So can you talk to us a little bit more about balancing that working hard, making it fun, and then also the culture that you're weaving in at Moralis?
Yeah, and I think working hard is all about interest, because I work hard because I like what we're doing. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like building a Lego or Bionicle. It's for fun. But if you tell me do something else, which I don't like, I will not do it nearly as hard. I will take all shortcuts possible. And so that's why I think building a startup requires you to work very hard. Like, there is no room for 9 to 5. And that's why it's important to find people that love that and don't get burned out easily, because I think burnout is real if you're doing something that you don't really fully like. And there are limits, of course, as well. If you do things you like and it's 24/7, you may burn out as well. But it's way more difficult to burn out if you like something. And your recharge is going to be faster, at least in my experience. I mean, I also get tired, but sometimes I take half day, a day off, or just do less, and then I'm fully back. So I think just finding those people is so important, because it's tough. It's a global market. It's 24/7. Everyone right now competes with everyone. So you need to have very committed people and very talented people as well. And that's also a way of counteracting burnout, if you have the talent as number one priority. So outside of this book, there's another book from Netflix. I don't remember what it's called. It's called No Rules Rule from Netflix, where they speak about talent density as being number one. And I'm very thankful that we read that book early on, because we have a book club at Moralis, and we read different books. And early on we read No Rules Rule from Netflix, where they speak about talent density being number one thing, because that is when you can achieve a lot in little time, where you have teams that can actually focus on the fun things instead of having overhead, because you have less talented people in the team who need explaining, who now the manager needs to spend a lot more time with them. And to have this meritocracy is very important, because smart people want to work with smart people. Talented people want to work with talented people. So we can all focus on fun, on delivering, on creating value, and as little as possible on meeting, syncing, this and that. Everyone should be synced automatically if you are on the same level as the top people. And otherwise, the top people you have, they will come down to not being non-top, so that they are in sync with everyone else, and they need to bring everyone to their level. So I think that's so important, because that's how we have less meetings, we have less overhead, we can work fully remote, because in a 24/7 environment, if you can have this freedom and responsibility, it helps a lot. It helps very much. If I can tell you, hey, listen, this is our project, this is the roadmap, and I know that when you go to bed and we wake up here in Europe, we will be able to continue that, and we know what to expect from each other. So I think that's super key to have talent density, and then burnout figures itself out, and everything, and it becomes more fun. And we had the whole journey how to train our teams to look for that, because as founders we can easily find that, because when we started Moralis, of course you cannot join us and be the third person if you're not on our level. We will ensure that whoever is like our first employee is on our level. But then when you grow to 10, 15, okay, now someone else makes the hiring decision. And it's very important that they know the standard and they follow the standard and they don't lower the bar. Because the founders, we are inherently very demanding because we create this and we know what we want. But to have this hiring culture, it's very important. And yeah, like I say, we are fully remote in 40 countries. We try to work in an asynchronous way as much as possible, meaning that it's a write first culture. Basically, before you take a call, create a GitLab issue. So we use GitLab as a tool for internal project management. Create an issue there, explain what you want. Maybe you have your own ideas. That's the thing. When you have a writing first culture, when you create the issue, the request, already you yourself find like 5 ideas. Because now you actually have to sit for 5 minutes and write it down, and it ensures that people think before they create a bunch of meetings and a bunch of requests everywhere, and that's super good as well because then you have transparency because of that. So if I'm a new person, I can read all the there is a trail of everything, all decisions that have been made, all the requests that have been made. So that has also been very important in a 24/7 remote first global company. You need, I think, a writing first culture so that we write down as much as possible. And we do calls, we need calls as well, but the problem with calls is that now everyone needs to be at the same time, and we're in all countries. Yeah. And how do you get the information spread from that call fully? It's you need to be disciplined.
Yeah, absolutely. And we experienced that the last go round. We were a completely globally distributed team, and I don't know that we ever landed on the right balance. And I like the right first approach. One, as an autistic person, that makes me happy because I need time to process anyway. And you're going to get a way better feedback out of me if you just give me a minute to think it through. But I think that also allows space for quieter voices in the room, introverts, to have their opinion heard. Because when you're in a big meeting, you've always got those loud voices, the big characters that come in and they can overpower and derail the agenda. So I think there are so many benefits from that. I did have a question, if you don't mind, just to better understand how you keep because I agree that asynchronous collaboration can work a dream as long as everybody's marching in the same order. And you mentioned keeping everybody synced automatically by anchoring them in to the vision. How do you consistently do that? Like, how do you message with that?
Well, it's a constant exercise in discipline that as soon as we see someone booking a call without an agenda or without even trying to figure it out in writing first, we tell them, please remove the call. Like, can we figure it out in GitLab? And in many cases, it's just an answer in GitLab and it's done. And then the person thinks, wow. Okay, it makes sense. It's mainly people who are new to the team. They're used to discussing a lot and having a lot of calls, and then they just try once. And of course, we have rigorous onboarding. We have an open source course which is called moralis.io/MBS. It's called Moralis Business School, so it's MBS, where we explain all of that, how we work, so we can start onboarding people even before they start. So let's say someone starts in 3 months, they have 3 months to do the onboarding, where we explain all of that. So it's not easy. It always is. It's always a challenge to keep everyone on the same page. But once people understand, then they are enforcing that culture. Because, of course, it's much better if developers can develop and not take calls. Developers don't want to take calls. The best day for, and this is research done globally, the best day for a developer is when you can focus on the problems, you don't have a bunch of calls and distractions, and you can get things done. That's when developers report the highest job satisfaction. And the opposite of that is a bunch of meetings and distractions and context switching. So this is, discipline is key, and it's not easy, and we're still figuring it out ourselves. We have it partially figured out, but there are still some things that do require synchronous calls. There are some things where we are discussing something asynchronously, but then we don't get a reply for like 3 days from someone because they're busy with other things, and it would just be faster to do a call. So we're still figuring out the details, but overall, it's a model that we like.
Yeah, and I can definitely tell you got an e-learning background since you're pre-onboarding people. That is music to my HR tech ears.
Right.
So I think that is such an efficiency gain that is not utilized across the board.
Yeah.
And I just do not understand why more, because you have a lot of drop off when you've got a long time from offer to the point of hiring somebody. So why not use that to train on all the fun admin stuff that nobody wants to do their first couple of weeks anyway. So kudos to you for that as well.
Thanks.
Hopefully that's something our listeners can take away to maybe think through incorporating into their plan as well. And, I know we touched on this a little bit before, but it would be great to revisit what it's like to actually get out there and talk with VCs, pitching to them. And then also, if you've ever thought about incorporating like alternative funding strategies, and this is something that myself and my clients and our listeners bat questions around about a lot of the time, especially with the VC landscape as it is right now.
Yeah.
So, how did that work for you, pitching and raising funds? And then what are your thoughts on alternative funding?
Well, I think first and foremost, too many people focus too much on VC, and it is important to get VCs. I think it's important, but too many people forget the fundamentals. So, for example, I have my own friends from high school who are asking, Ivan, can you send us your deck for VC? How did you do it? Can you send us your deck? But man, if I send you our deck, you will get zero from it because we describe our fundamentals. So there is, just like we discussed, there is no silver bullet in business and in startups. There are just a lot of lead bullets. The same thing is with raising capital. Like, there's no way to structure the deck where suddenly everyone's gonna believe it and understand it, and there's no way, have maximum 3 pages or 5 pages. And the reason I'm saying all of that is because in the past I believed that as well. I'm like, if I will only find this perfect deck and it will have this perfect amount of pages, everyone will just give me money. It doesn't work like that, and so that's why it's difficult to give any concrete advice, because there is no silver bullet. But in general, I think it's important to explain the big vision, and that's why in the beginning I explained that VC makes sense if you have a big global vision and you're gonna build something that's gonna scale exponentially. So if you have a business that is like that, then you can proceed. If you don't have a business like that, you will not raise a lot of VC capital, at least in the sense that I have experience in. Maybe there's other kind of funding for that, but that's the first criteria. Can it be really big, like really big? And there, think the biggest you can. And maybe it's scary for you to think in the biggest possible version, but that's what's required. So maybe you think that, okay, in the best case, my company will become super global, but it's like, it's maybe too good to be true to put in the deck. Maybe, let me put something like a smaller regional. No, put the biggest one. So I think that's a good advice, because the mindset always has to be that this is global, this is massive, huge, exponential. And depending on the stage you're at, I would definitely recommend, if you're early stage, to have a prototype that works and to have some kind of metrics. Because again, VCs, they're smart people. They want metrics, and they're very data driven. So there's no way to structure to word your deck in some gimmicky fashion. It needs to be big vision, and then it needs to be clear metrics, and it needs to tell you that, okay, we have this proof of concept, say, and we have this growth already, and it's just proof of concept, and it's not even all the features. Maybe the first feature is not even live because we need funding, but we have a small group that is trying these features, and they are already paying us, and they're already committed to be our clients. So being data driven is very important, and to show that this plan that you have, being super global, it is possible. Like, you don't need to know the entire plan, because no one knows that, but that you can show that what you have, actually, it's good. It's something the market needs. It's something that clients love. If you can figure that out, it's fantastic. And and then it's all about practicing. I think practicing to explain it is important, so that before, let's say you have a few VC meetings, you can try with some funds that you want to have on board, but then maybe you have some favorite fund you really want to get on board. So you can try with those that you want to get on board, but save the best one for later. So you can practice the Q&A, you can practice the whole interaction, because that is something that will come with time, and you need a few of these training rounds before you're really good. So yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you some silver bullet, but all in all, it's just it's all about, does this make sense, and will it become massive? And just be fully honest, fully transparent. Like for example, one thing I know that investors don't appreciate is being a bit not fully transparent with the numbers. So a good example of that is, let's say you have your user growth and you show your users as a total. So you have a chart and it just goes up, and it continues to go up and it never goes down, which makes sense if you show like the total users. Yes, I mean, they're all total. And you show a chart as if that's supposed to be impressive. But how many of them are active? How many new do you get per month? Because that's what's important. Is this thing still growing, or it grew like the first week and then everyone stopped using it? Because that's two different stories you can tell. So I think if what you don't want to do is to be non-transparent. To, for example, show a user chart that goes up, but then they ask you, okay, so how many in the last month? Okay, 2 people, but you say it's 1,000 here. And okay, how many are active? 50, but it says that it's 1,000 in this chart. So so don't try to do any of that. Be fully transparent, fully open, show what you really have. And if the numbers don't make sense, listen, maybe the business doesn't make sense. Why do you need the funding then? It's just going to be a waste of money. Ensure that it makes sense. That in the early stages, it's got to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, like the numbers don't check out, I mean, do something else. You can figure out something else that does make sense. So yeah, don't try to push something that you know doesn't make sense. Figure something out that actually checks out number-wise.
Yeah, and I love the call out on, I was like pre-planning like pitches that will bomb so that you can practice. This was sort of a cardinal rule of enterprise sales for us. Is like your first pitch was never going to be with like HSBC, right? Like, so you would always go in and, pick some lower level accounts where if you just completely tanked and got your messaging horribly wrong, you weren't going to damage everything. So that's a really strong call out there. And was there, I think there's also some benefit in terms of just researching who you want to cold outreach. Like, did you have a set process for determining who you were going to reach out to?
Yeah, and this is in the and that's why it's this building tech and building startups is always easier with time, because you get more and more connections with time. Because when we started, we also thought, okay, so how do you do it? Do I go to sequoia.com, contact us, I send there, like where do I start? And I would recommend to get an introduction, because that's kind of the first step. And I now understand why it works like that, because in the beginning I thought, oh, but that's unfair, like why does it work like that? It makes perfect sense to me now, because listen, if you cannot even figure out how to get an intro, how the hell will you figure out your business? Because it's gonna be way harder. At least try to figure out how to get an intro. How are you gonna hire a great team if you don't have the social skills or the capability to figure out an intro? Because business, it's social activity. You need a great team. You need to explain your strategy well. You need to explain your strategy to your entire team. So I think that's why it works like that. That it's a sign that at least you've done something already. If I'm an investor, let's say, I don't even need to look at your deck. I already know that, okay, you've done at least something, because this person is introducing us. So we're not starting from zero. I mean that's what I would recommend in the early stages, if that was your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And then I think, another piece of insight that would be really good for the listeners would be, once you've come up with a great idea, you've built a solid strategy and plan, you've managed to get your funding in place, you've been running at a clip, and now it's time to scale. How do you, what is your advice for that transition period? Because it is different, and you're going to come up against new challenges transitioning from startup to scale up. So what are your thoughts on there, your advice there?
Yeah, and we're still in that stage, and we're still figuring it out in terms of being a scale up. And what has worked really well for us is talent density, which we mentioned, is so important, especially when you scale, because things do become more complex. And all the small efficiencies you can gain, for example, one less meeting or one less sync to bring everyone up to speed because someone is not fully on our level, so we need to like explain to them the thing 5 times, and everyone else can understand it in 2 times. So eliminate all of that because it does add up very quickly. In the beginning, you may not notice that, and in the beginning, it may be okay with not being super disciplined with talent. But as it grows, suddenly it becomes this snowball of friction, and that's something that it's important to avoid. And then it comes to being disciplined with the way you communicate. Do we all contact each other randomly and being fully flat? Maybe that works in the beginning. But then it doesn't really work as you scale. So being disciplined with exactly how we speak to each other and communicating the strategy very well, I think that's super important. In the beginning, we're a few founders. We know the strategy. We can kind of read each other's mind because we've been working for so long. So we know what we mean when we say different things. And then when you are bigger, you need to be able to do that. Now in a bigger organization, people misunderstand. You said that, they thought that is this. So it's important to repeat things. That's a key thing, to repeat the strategy, repeat the goals, set clear targets for the company and the different sub-teams. There's a good book called Art of Action, which really explains very well the similarities between having a corporate strategy, a business strategy, and having everyone go in one direction, and how it is in the military. So I thought that book is brilliant because he compares like Prussian army in the 19th century and why they were so efficient with how business can be structured where everyone knows. Because imagine yourself controlling a massive army, you don't have an iPhone to call them, it's all like kind of delayed, and tens of thousands of people. So having a clear strategy and having everyone go in the same direction, it becomes so important as you grow, because in the beginning it's easy, everyone is on the same page. Now we're bigger, it's not easy. So I mean, there are some advice like that, but and just be prepared that it's difficult every day, and find some kind of pleasure in that, or I don't know, find some way to like that, and see it as a Lego building and not like pain.
Yeah, and I think there's a power in reframing things, and we talk a lot about that in the psychology community. And I mean, and we talked a little bit about burnout, but the truth is, I think there's such a misconception about what burnout actually is and how you can possibly prevent it. So burnout, like at its core, is just when the demands of life outstrip your coping mechanisms. So if you want to prevent burnout, or you don't want to experience that, you just need to upskill yourself in your coping mechanisms, right? You need to add tools to your toolkit to make you more resilient. And I was having a chat with a CEO earlier today, and we were kind of like nerding out on neurobiology for a hot second, and we were talking about the concept of homeostasis. So I'm full disclosure, I'm in the middle of like halfway through a medical neurobiology course right now. And my area of study has all been like how the nervous system and the different control centers in your body work together to keep you at homeostasis, which is just basically like internal stability despite constant changes externally. Right. And your body does this like amazingly well, right? It's getting hit with far more data than anything that we could ever possibly bring into a business. So I think there's so much that we can learn from how our biological systems work and extrapolate that into business, where sure, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be stressors, we're going to have to work hard, we're going to need to be resilient, but you can train for that. And training for that is an ongoing process. Like, it's never done. There's not, like, just like regulating your body is never done. Well, until you're done, but that just happens all day, every day for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
So you can do that as well. So I love that. So thank you for letting me autistically brain dump on you there.
I think it's a good analogy, and to keep that balance, you need to have big goals, because if you have a small goal, it's not going to be worth it. Like, that's the thing. It needs to be worth it, because even let's say that you have a small goal, the problem is that it's going to be almost as difficult to achieve another goal which is maybe 100 times bigger, because it's just going to be a change in mindset from the beginning. So the amount of effort probably is going to be similar, but the way you're going to think, the way you're going to structure, the way you're going to hire, the way you're going to raise capital is going to be just in another level of thinking. And that will yield better results. Not because the effort is more, but because the mission is bigger and you are planning for a bigger thing to begin with. Maybe you can already in the beginning hire some executive that can be very good and can offload you sooner than if you're building a smaller thing where you're now running the whole thing for way too long and you don't delegate early enough. So I think the balance makes sense, and to keep it, what has helped me at least is that the goal needs to be high enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what's also cool is you can get fractional help nowadays. Like it used to be that you would have to shell out a ton of cash potentially when you really needed it to divert into other areas like product development. But now you can work with some really experienced, talented folks on a fractional basis. So there's just so much more flexibility and options than there were even when I started, my entrepreneurial journey over 10 years ago. Which is really cool. And the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I've been mulling this around in my head, I don't think you can really talk about the future of finances at all,
right,
without crypto entering the conversation.
Yeah,
right? And I've been really trying to figure out, like, what are the positive implications of crypto's existence for like providing alternative funding methods, right? Or like providing new outlets or revenue streams or just things that we're not thinking about because we're stuck in the this is how we used to do it mode as entrepreneurs. So do you have any thoughts there?
Well, absolutely, because crypto is global finance. It's the fact that anyone can send money to anyone in the world, and you just need an internet connection. How insane is that? I mean, just that without signing up to PayPal, or you don't zero sign up. You have an internet connection wherever you are in the world. If you have a desktop computer or laptop or an iPhone or Android, you can now send and receive funds to anyone in the world. That is insane. And that opens up so many possibilities to now work on a global level. For example, how do you pay people that work for you in countries where banking is not developed? And there are billions of people in this world without bank accounts. I mean, literally billions. So I think that as a whole is a very empowering concept. That's why I love crypto so much, because it levels the field, and it's radical financial inclusion. It's all about financial inclusion. That you can get paid, you can pay anyone you want, whoever they are, wherever they are. When it comes to funding, a lot has to do with the fact that now you are on a global playing field. Again, you are in some place in the world where the banking is not established, VC ecosystem is not established. Well, now you're on a global playing field, and you can do business with anyone, and you can accept payments or investments from anyone. And I think that's so empowering, also from the perspective that we don't really know how the innovation is going to shape the future of finance, because it's only just begun. A good example is with smartphones, because obviously the telephone has been a good invention even before smartphone. But when you allow developers to build on top of the phone, the whole game changed. And that's what crypto is doing to finance. That before cryptocurrencies, all the banks and this fintech space is very limited for developers. You cannot build anything. And now with cryptocurrencies, anyone can build anything. So you can deploy your own assets. You can create your own programs that do things with assets. So for example, you can program an exchange where someone can send money to your program and get back another kind of asset. So it can do foreign exchange in real time on the blockchain. Or you can program lending as well. Let's say that I have capital, I can send it to a program and it lends it out, and that of course opens up the lending market now to a global audience. So overall, I think that the future of finance is changing forever, and a way of thinking about it is that we're adding developer creativity on top of finance, just like we added developer creativity on top of the phone with the smartphone, and imagine how finance will change because of that. And another way of thinking about it is that we're open sourcing all finance. Just like internet came and open source all information, And now anyone can find anything online and learn anything and study anything. The same now is with finance. That's all finance in the world is online via the blockchain. Everything that happens is on the blockchain, and anyone can build on that. I can build on something that you've built, so it becomes this composable Legos, we call it, composable financial Legos. If you build an exchange, I can now integrate your exchange into my game. So for example, if I do a game and I have my in-game currency, now anyone in the world can trade that in-game currency with anyone else in the world using your exchange that is like a module on the blockchain. I mean, it's insane what we can do with Web3, and I think it's mostly relevant if you like this kind of thing, if you want to be part of the Web3 community, you want to build this out, because we are in early stages. So it's kind of like asking what will internet do for the average person in the early 90s. I mean, there are some things like email, you can browse some things, but it's still up and coming, it's still under development. So crypto is the same right now. There are certain use cases which have crystallized a lot, which is, for example, international payments. It's very crystallized. It is, for example, when it comes to trading. You want to trade some asset for any other asset, you can do it on chain. And then there are other things, for example, with crowdfunding, which are quite big as well, where you can accept payments from anyone, quite crystallized as well. And new use cases are going to come. And another use case, of course, is just protecting your capital, where you have high inflation, which is this year has hit the Western world, but it's something that's hit many countries. It's something that has hit many countries for a long time, where you can now have, you want to buy gold, there is a gold cryptocurrency that is tied to gold. You want to buy anything, you can do everything on chain. So it's a space that is growing rapidly, and a big problem is that there is so much data generated, and that's where Moralis comes in. That's where we come in, because each and every day there are millions of transactions, and we order them. We ensure that they're easy to use for developers, and that's the potential of Web3, and that's what we're doing.
And I love that, because I think I think this, you made the point that, you can get into this space if this is something that you like doing, but I don't think that it's that flexible. I think because of the state of the global economy, because of what's happening with inflation, I think that it's, and this is just my humble opinion, I think that it's borderline irresponsible to not conquer your fear and get to know this to some degree, and incorporate it into your business strategy, but also into your personal investment strategy. And I think we're gonna all get outdated pretty quickly if us oldies over here don't sort our lives out. But I think one of the things that really excites me about what crypto brings to the table is the opportunity for transparency. Right now, in traditional banking, I push my button and I send my money, and I have no idea what is going on behind the scenes. And it's still it's shocking to me how many people don't realize that, money is no longer tied to the gold standard, and like that went away in the 70s. There's not like a real understanding of how money works today anyway. There's no transparency to what's happening behind the scenes, which is how we keep getting ourselves into all of this trouble. So I think, yes, it is a problem that there's like a load of data and no one knows how to analyze it or find it or package it, but at least it's there, and some folks are thinking about how to simplify, accessing it, and then making it visible to everyone.
And especially for the young generation. Listen, if you are a developer, programming, you are 12 like your son, you can build your own app, you can create your own coin, you can create your own game with its own in-game currency that may or may not get some market value. If the game is good and people want to play it and there's some use case in the game, now the whole world can trade it. Isn't that insane? That you can create something with an asset that can get a price, because the whole world can trade it, and it can get traded on chain. Like you can trade from the coin you just created to Bitcoin or to ETH, and that's so much opportunity. I mean, I interviewed, we have our own podcast in Moralis. I interviewed a 13-year-old from India, and he has done a game, and the people sent him like $200,000 because he sold this in-game assets, and now the people are playing his game. I mean, it's insane. It's insane that you can be anyone, anywhere, and if you do something interesting, you now have access to the world capital. It's insane. So, I had the same experience when I was growing up. I'm like, why can't I buy things online? I have to ask my parents for each and every purchase. What the hell? Why? It's and that's so liberating, because now anyone can buy anything. You have Bitcoin, you can buy things online. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's absolutely epic. And this has been such an incredibly insightful conversation. Thank you so much for taking this time to share your journey and to let us into your world. If folks do want to get in touch with you or to continue to follow along with the Moralis journey, where can they find you?
Yeah, I think Twitter is the best. So if you go to Twitter and you search Moralis, you'll find the company. And if you search Ivan on tech, you will find me. And that's the best way to keep in touch in real time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us again this week. For those of you who are looking for some life upskilling opportunity, please feel free to jump onto your app store of choice and download the 7 Summits app. We are moving and shaking in the e-learning space on the 7 Summits app, and we have quite a lot of new programming that will be rolling out over the course of the next couple of months. But in the meantime, feel free to start your journey with our 7-day alignment challenge. And